Well, welcome to the St. Thomas Aquinas presentation in our lecture series. This series is made possible through the Marie-Louise Bianchi Fund. Marie-Louise was a member of the class of 1931 and made a bequest to the college to promote the spirit of the Dominican tradition and the legacy of the thoughts of Thomas Aquinas. This annual series is one way the college continues her gift to the community here. We are very blessed this evening to have a number of sisters and associates from the Sisters of Notre Dame de Namur, as well as students and faculty from East Catholic High School, who all share the charism and mission of the Sisters of Notre Dame, the congregation of Dorothy Stang. So this is a special evening for you. So would you all stand so we can welcome you from East and all the sisters and associates. This evening, we will have the opportunity to meet two inspirational women, Sister of Notre Dame, Dorothy Stang, and Dominican Sister Nancy Murray, who will present Rooted in Love, the Life and Martyrdom of Sister Dorothy Stang. Our first inspirational woman, Dorothy Stang. Dorothy said, "I don't want to flee, nor do I want to abandon the battle of these farmers who live without any protection in the forest. They have the sacrosanct right to aspire to a better life on the land, where they can live and work with dignity while respecting the environment." On February 12, 2005, on a rainy Saturday, Dorothy Stang returned from a small village in the Amazon in Brazil, where she had traveled to bring clothes and food to families whose homes had been burned by ranchers and logging companies, intent upon driving out the farmers. Upon her return, Dorothy was walking to a meeting with farmers to see what could be done to alleviate the hostility between the farmers and the landowners, when two men approached her with weapons drawn. As the gunmen pointed their weapons at her, Sister Dorothy reached into her simple cloth bag, took out her Bible, and began reading the Beatitudes. "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God." After some moments of hesitation, the gunmen shot her 6 times at point-blank range. Tonight we will have the opportunity to learn more about this woman and why she was able to offer her life for the sake of others. Our other inspirational woman this evening is Sister Nancy Murray, a Dominican sister from Adrian, Michigan, who will be portraying Dorothy Stang. Nancy has made her mark on audiences across the country and throughout the world by bringing to life, through one-woman shows, both Dorothy Stang and the Dominican Saint Catherine of Siena. With simple props and fertile imagination, Nancy brings alive these great women who each in their own time showed us how to live the gospel through the integrity of their own personal lives and their selfless service to others. Nancy was born in Evanston, Illinois, the third of 9 children, just like Dorothy, big family. 4 of her brothers are also actors, including Bill Murray, who most of us have seen in the movies. Nancy received a bachelor's degree in speech and drama from Barry University and a master's degree in pastoral studies from Loyola University. Over the years, Nancy has served in a variety of ministries: high school teaching in dance, drama, and theology, campus ministry, pastoral work, youth ministry, and she began a program that provided Hispanic youngsters with opportunities in the performing arts. In addition, Nancy taught preaching, proclamation, and public prayer at Loyola University's Institute of Pastoral Studies for 9 years. Now, in addition to all that, in her congregation, she also served as vocation director. During our performance, there will be in the middle of it a 5-minute intermission, and you'll know when that's going to happen. But now, let us meet these two inspirational women, Dorothy Stang and her presenter, Nancy Murray.
Before Tom, the big story where you are is the murder last month of the Catholic missionary sister Dorothy Stang, a nun who was active in supporting the rights of peasant farmers in the Amazon. What's the latest development?
Well, the latest is that they've got a couple of the pistoleros, they call them, the actual people who killed her, or who they're accusing of killing her, and they're being investigated, and what they're really trying to see is whether there was a wider conspiracy. The latest person who turned himself in is supposed to have been some sort of a go-between, but they're really not sure how far the whole thing goes, whether it was a small local killing or whether it involved more powerful economic interests in that region of the Amazon. The actual assassins are saying they didn't do it by themselves, that they were hired by local politicians to do it. So I think this is going to run and run, and it's very difficult to see how, at the moment, actually how much of a conspiracy, if you like, there was behind the killing.
Now, you yourself interviewed her, as you said. What were your impressions of her as a woman?
She is one of these people who really believes very strongly in what she's doing. She's dedicated most of her life living with communities in Brazil, the latest up in the Amazon, for a long period. And she's someone who has very, very strong convictions. She saw what she was doing up there almost as a struggle, a sort of war, if you like, to try to stop big economic interests from destroying the Amazon, and also from keeping the communities in which she was working in poverty. And to give you an idea, the very first question she asked me when I walked in the door was, "Whose side are you on?" Making it very clear that she was someone who was working with the communities, a lot of them communities that have emigrated from the very worst and poorest part of Brazil up to the Amazon. I think she was someone who was prepared to take what she believed to the logical limits. And I think it was quite exemplary in some way that she had a portrait of the Archbishop of San Salvador, Monsignor Romero, the Salvadoran Archbishop who was murdered back in 1980, on her wall. And she was very much the type of person who I think was prepared to push what she believed in and live by what she believed in and take it to its logical limit.
Tom, thanks for joining us. Tom Gibb in Sao Paulo. You're listening to Reporting Religion from the BBC World.
Dad, I'm coming. I'll help you. And off we would go, down to our 1-acre farm to see what was growing, what needed a little more grow time, and what weeds needed to be pulled. You see, my father was a military career man, and he liked order, precision, and yes, sirs. But when he was in the garden, I loved him best. He would care for those fruits and veggies like they were some more kids to be proud of. And I think if I do this, that will make it. You know, when you're one of 9 kids, you have to find ways to be with your parents when it's just you. For me, that was the garden. Don't get me wrong, we were a close family who played, prayed, shared hand-me-down clothes, rode bikes, caught lightning bugs, along with setting the dinner table, making our beds, and doing the dishes. Mom would like to make charts to make sure that all of the jobs were equally distributed and that we could all get to our homework. I'll race you home, Jimmy. Oh, my book dropped. I'm telling Mom on you. My name is Dorothy Mae Stang. You can call me Dot. My birthday is June 7th, 1931. And I am number 4 of 9 kids. Jimmy, John, Mary, Dot, Maggie, and Norma, they were twins, Barbara, and more twins, David and Tom. My father's name was Henry Stang. He was real smart. He graduated summa cum laude in chemical engineering from the University of Dayton. But my father really was an organic farmer at heart. even though he was an officer at the Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio. My mom, her name was Edna McCluskey Stang. She was Irish and one of the best homemakers around. She cared not only for her own family, but she would make extras for the neighbors and poor people who would be needing help during these difficult times. She was even in charge of the food booth at the parish benefit for the big picnic for the St. Joseph Orphan Home. Back to our garden. It was wonderful. We grew lettuce and carrots, tomatoes, corn, cucumbers, watermelon, and you can be sure that my father was thrifty and exacting. He made sure we saved all the scraps. We knew about composting and recycling long before a lot of people did. He was so thrifty, he even would make the soles of our shoes out of old tires. We collected rainwater in big containers and saved it for washing our hair and doing the laundry. And we would can all those tomatoes. We'd pile them into the bathtub, boil them, skin them, bring the skins down to the composting, and then we would have tomatoes to use all through the winter. We also had sheep and raised rabbits and chickens. But being with Dad in the garden, you could see that he loved the earth. We'd go walking and he'd show me wild mushrooms. He'd bend down, feel the dirt, smell its riches, and say, "You've got to plant with love so that the seeds will grow strong." We even had our own fertilizer. It was made from the manure of the animals and the compost from the kitchen. I think that's why we had the strongest weeds in the neighborhood. Mom and Dad believed that God made the world and we should respect it, even the weeds. We had real jobs too. My older brothers had paper routes and sometimes in the summer had caddy jobs on the golf course. But the younger kids, we picked fruits at the Moomaws Fruit Farm. Nobody worried about the ages of the kids. We even brought the little ones. We'd pack up our lunches, go and pick fruit, and then always look for a place where there was a pond nearby where we could jump in, get a little swim before we went back to picking the fruit. Yes, life was simple then. We didn't have any TV, but we did have a gramophone, and we loved to dance around it. We had an old Ringer washing machine, and you had to be careful that you didn't get your fingers caught in it. St. Rita's, that was the name of our parish. And we knew all the priests, and they knew the Stang family as we piled in 2 by 2 to Sunday Mass. School was good. I guess I did okay. But Mother wanted us to have extra lessons. So I was to take piano lessons that summer. In the summertime. Well, Mother said I had to practice for at least 1/2 an hour. I wanted to be outside on my bicycle. I had an idea. I put my bicycle outside the window behind the piano where that was, and then as I started practicing, letting Mom think I was practicing, I climbed out the window, got on my bike, and went rolling down the driveway. Our house was on the top of a long driveway. Well, I was so excited in my leaving that I went down the hill, flipped over, and fell splat on the ground and broke my tooth. It was a bad idea. But there was a lot of mischief to get into when a big family is being raised, and Mom and Dad kept up with all of us. Soon it was going to be time to go to high school, and I was going to go to Juliet, where my mother had gone. They had the Sisters of Notre Dame de Namur. And when I got there, I saw something special about the sisters. How they liked the students. About the way I would feel. And about the clubs I could join. I loved the Mission Club. Mission Club was where we learned about people in other countries. I even got a volunteer job in town working with the Dominican Sisters of the Sick Poor, who made bandages to send away to foreign countries, and also to help other poor people. My sister Mary and I, we would wash out medicine and milk of magnesia bottles to be reused again for people who were poor. Mary decided to become a nurse while she was doing this, and a few years later, so did my sister Barbara. Caring about other people and having our hearts open to a bigger world was something that was very exciting to me. I joined the YCS, Young Christian Students, where we learned to observe, judge, and act. We would hear some scriptures and think about how we could put those Bible words into action each week. I loved learning about new things and thinking about new ways of creating adventure in my life. That's what I wanted, adventure. One day, we had a missionary sister. She came to school to speak to all of us about her work in China and about all of the poor people there. It touched my heart very much, and I felt that's what I want. I want my life to make a difference. So about a year later, when my friend Joan and I were talking, and Joan mentioned that she was going to join the convent, I looked at her with great surprise and said, I think that's what I want to do too. But Dad, you're still in high school. I know, but I don't think it will be, my mother and Dad won't mind. Besides, you can't leave me here. Well, it wasn't with great approval, but my parents did let me go. I was 17 years old when I left with Joan to join the Notre Dame de Namur Sisters. And on top of my application, I wrote real big, I want to go to China. Our families drove us to the mother house in Cincinnati. We only had a little time with them before we had to say goodbye. I kissed them all and was so surprised to see tears in the eyes of my family. They were going to miss me. That was a surprise. But now as a postulant, with 50 other young women, I was going to learn how to be a nun. This new life was going to have a lot of discipline and silence. I knew something about discipline, nothing about silence. We would learn about bells, early rising, morning prayer, work, study, meditation, more silence, and finally recreation, when we could talk. Sometimes Joan and I would sneak out back behind the garage and pick fruit from the tree and sit on the grass, chomping and talking. I guess they were survival skills when we were especially homesick. One day I received a letter from home saying my dad had just received orders. He was being sent to the Air Force base in Germany, and those who were still at home had to go with them for at least 4 years. Visits with our families were already limited to only a few hours every couple of months, but now letters were going to be more important. Soon, postulancy was over and we were going to become novices. And during the novitiate year, we would learn more about prayer, the vows, and prepare us for mission. We learned about our foundress, Mother Julie Viriat. And Julie said, though she felt that those who put their trust in God would never be shaken. Her words, how good is the good God, are the motto of the order that still motivates Notre Dame sisters all over the world. At the end of my novitiate year, I made first vows at age 20 and was sent to be an assistant third grade teacher outside Chicago at St. Victor's School in Calumet City. Several months later, I was sent across the city to Villa Park, and there I taught 4th, 5th, and 6th graders at St. Alexander's. I loved the older students too. My family was also moving and growing. John was now in the Air Force, Jim in the Navy. A couple of my sisters had gotten married. Tom and David were in the seminary. Our once close-knit big family was moving all over the world, like seeds scattered. I was real happy to learn I would be moving too, out of Illinois, to join 3 other sisters to open a new school in Sunny Slope, Arizona. I was really excited about this adventure. Oh, was it hot and dusty. It was so different from the 4 seasons I was used to in the Midwest. But those details weren't very important, as I learned the names of my students, got excited about my classes, and we moved into our new convent. After we got to know all of the children in the school, we found there were more children that we didn't know. The kids who went to the public school, and decided that we would start a religious ed program for them. And so we did that every Saturday morning, and Wednesday nights was for the high school kids. And soon the priest said, well, is there something else you want to do? We were so young and enthusiastic with so much energy. We looked around and saw migrants and the Navajo Indian Reservation. And they became a new source of our love and energy. We would have our classes in the migrant camps in the little houses that were so tiny and cramped. Often we would end up just taking chairs from the homes and being outside. One time we were out there and the crop dusters were going over the fields. Seeing them, we were frightened and said, quick, let's all get in the back of our station wagon. And we were trying to get all the kids. Get your mom too, she's right over there. And that's when we learned that if the parents left the field, they would lose their job. Well, I was excited about all of this work, but most happy to receive a letter from home. My mom was going to drive out with my brother David, who is now a Maryknoll missionary, on a home visit from Africa, and they were going to stay with us. I couldn't wait to have them see the work we were doing in the school and to take them down to the migrant camp. I loved my years in Arizona. Our community grew, the school grew, the parish did. These words of the Gospel of Matthew, when I was hungry and thirsty, naked and imprisoned, you helped me. They would continue to be very important in my life. So it was not a big surprise to my family when a few years later they learned that I said yes to an invitation of our community to open a mission in Brazil, South America. Well, it wasn't China, but I thought, if South America is far away as I can go to be a missionary, sign me up. I went back to Ohio that summer and learned my friend Joan had the same spark in her eye when the request for missionaries in Brazil was presented. We were going together. Wow! Look at that view. We began our descent into South America. It was the end of August 1966 when 5 of us Notre Dame de Namur sisters arrived in Rio de Janeiro. Sisters Joan, Marie, Patricia, Barbara, and me. A bus took us to the hilltop city of Petropolis, where the Catholic University would become our new training ground. There were 60 priests and sisters who came from many different countries who would spend the next 4 months studying and preparing for mission. We had language classes and learned about the political, educational, and cultural environment of Brazil. Portuguese is the language of Brazil, not Spanish that I was just catching on to in Arizona. It took a while to get used to some of the new foods. There were a few embarrassing moments when I responded favorably to invitations, but with unfavorable results. As the weeks progressed, we ventured into the big city and could see the beautiful homes and crowded streets, begging children with torn clothing, drunks lying on the side of the road, street vendors selling mangoes, avocados, and pineapples and beautifully dressed people. Everyone was either very rich or very poor. When mission school was completed, it took 3 days of travel before we arrived in Corowata, a city of 12,000 people. A man named Braga was there with his jeep to meet us. As we traveled along the red dirt road, we couldn't help but notice the trees. Wow! Look at the size of those trees. Mango and Babasu, sister. You'll see some as tall as a 5-story building. The forest we traveled through was beautiful. As we got closer to the city, we could see donkeys and oxen as the means of transportation. A few roadside stands, a car and truck repair shop, a market, and pigs roaming in the street to eat the garbage. This was downtown Corowata. Braga took us to the parish rectory, where 2 Italian priests were there to greet us. Welcome, welcome, sisters, as they shook hands with each of us. We met Father Lorenzo and Father Gabriel. We had a simple meal together, and then Father Lorenzo took us down the street to our new home. It had been a converted warehouse, and they had just fixed it up a bit, getting it ready for us. We had some running water during the day, and electricity at night from 6 to 11 o'clock. We spent the next few days organizing, cleaning, and painting our home to the amazement of the people. Our Portuguese wasn't too great, and we found ourselves drawing pictures and pantomiming in the stores for things that we needed, like a meat grinder or an ironing board. The people weren't used to seeing independent women. We needed bookcases, so we made our own with stacks of bricks and wood shelves. They thought only men could do such things. We started going to every home, meeting with families and introducing ourselves. Soon, Bible classes would happen right there in the street. And every month we would travel with the priests out to the distant areas. People would know we were coming and have lookouts who would set off firecrackers announcing, "The Padre is coming!" We were trying to get to know who the leaders were in the villages so we could teach them to be catechists. One day, a lovely young woman named Grisinha came to our house. She was our first visitor. She told us, "When we heard nuns from the United States were coming, we thought that you would have long habits, stay in your house and pray. I have to admit, I came here because I was curious to see you. But you're different. You like to be with us, even the poor people. You have short skirts. You're cool. You know, some of us peasants, we don't feel comfortable in the church. Why? Because we see our rich landowners going there with their families, and they seem all kind and friendly there. But we see them in the fields, where they will jab you in the side with their rifle if they think you are taking a break, or cut your pay for that day. Some of our people have just disappeared forever after finding that they had taken some food from the landowner's kitchen. They don't treat the workers fairly. It's too hard to think that they pray to the same God we do." As Grisinha's eyes began to tear up, mine did too, and I moved to hug her. Her tears turned to a smile and then a little laugh as she looked over my shoulder and saw what I was preparing for dinner. They told me it was a fruit called bakuri. It had a hard shell with some gooey insides and seeds, kind of like a pumpkin, I thought. Well, I carved out the insides, threw them away, and was now boiling its skin. Grisinha laughed and said, "Sister Dorothy, you are doing it backwards. You threw out all of the good part, and you are going to serve the garbage." We all laughed, and soon Grisinha had to be going. I wasn't too worried about finding something else for us to eat, but I was concerned about what she had told us. I thought of our foundress, Mother Julie Billard, reminding us, as Jesus said, go, teach all nations. So our zeal should be wider than the universe. We decided that if we were to be a church, it was going to be a church with the poor. That meant if we were to work with the poor, we had to live with them and eat with them. If they only had rice, rice was all we needed, or the simple manioc flour. The people were so humble. They didn't believe that we would be happy to stay at their homes, and that we wanted to be with them, not just teach them. This way, they would know that they too were teaching us, and that we believed in their dignity. One of the benefits of this change was that more people started showing up when they heard we were coming to the village. We knew of Brazil's love of parades, carnival, and lively music. You know, blame it on the bossa nova. And that would be a good way to gather people. So we formed a small procession and walked through the town with the beat of a bongo drum and a tambourine, singing songs. There was dancing in the street as we made our way up to the church. The children were so open with us about their needs. Ricardo, where are your shoes? I don't have any. Seeing a child scratching a welt on her arm, I asked, Lily, what happened? Well, my grandma got real sick, and so she had to come and live with us, and I gave her my hammock and net, and so now I sleep on the floor, and now the bugs get me. Don't you have any medicine? I knew if I wrote to my family and the mission office and the parishes back home, I could get hand-me-down clothes for my nieces and nephews and medicine donations. Well, their response was tremendous, and both sides benefited, the givers and the receivers. Our groups were growing. We now had groups for men and women and the youth. All the groups would study the same passage from the Bible, and later we'd get together to hear everyone's views. The women weren't used to being listened to, much less having their voices heard in public. And at Mass the next day, the homily would be based on the reflections of the people. They began to feel more pride as important members of the church. Our Mass was a real, genuine community celebration based on how people were living and how they were feeling about their lives. As the people got to know us, they trusted us even more. So I started town square meetings. I'd look over the group gathered and say, looking for some men to volunteer. Fernando, can you help me? Sure, sister. I need you to ask some of your friends to come to a meeting, those who want to help make a better life. Tell them to think of some of the problems of the workers. We'll share them, and together we will find a way of solving them. They were ripe for change. A good feeling was growing in the villages. When the people heard Padre and I were coming, 600 people now came out to meet us. 7 months ago, that number was 50. The newly found groups were called Base Communities. We were thriving, but so too were suspicions. The priests and sisters were gaining popularity with the peasants. We were no longer just inside the church. We were now out in the fields. But the landowners thought that we should only be their friends. Building up the dignity of the peasants was not going to weaken the government. Officials saw it differently. We were questioned by them. Were we working with the communists? A lieutenant who came by our home happened to drop a page out of a military handbook. that had pictures of scary-looking knives and guns. Oh, I had to use those weapons once in battle with young revolutionaries. I hope we will not have to use them again in Brazil. Good day, sisters. We quietly laughed at his attempt to frighten us, as if we were riling up the peasants to overthrow the government. I think the military was actually threatened by the words of the gospel. Many of our people were out of work, desperate to find jobs, and heard that the government had a new plan for its overcrowded slum cities. Peasants were offered free plots of land in the Amazon forest. Road building had begun, and transportation was given to anyone who would move there. A one-way ticket to the jungle, to the forest. You know, 80% of Brazil's population was along the Atlantic coast, which is why in 1960 they moved the capital from Rio de Janeiro in 600 miles to Brasilia, with the hope that the population would move out of the city. Their slogan was, "Land for the people without land." Poor people from all over the country wanted to move immediately, be on a plane. But I knew many of these city poor did not know how to be farmers, and the soil of the forest is different. Their dreams were big, but I did not want them to fail. When a family asked me if I would go with them, I felt I had to. The groups here in Coroatá were growing strong, and I knew they could carry on. A new young sister had recently joined us. Sister Rebecca was part Native American and easily learned languages. I asked her if she would come with me. I knew she wanted to work with indigenous people and that I could not go alone. We also needed permission. The bishop in Pará gladly invited us to come live and teach in his diocese. He even sent us an official letter. It meant leaving my good friend Joan, but it was not a surprise to her or the others that we felt this call to be with this very poor group who would be starting over. Farewell parties, prayers, and good wishes helped give us the confidence and love needed to move us to a new adventure. Oh, I've got to let my family know about this. Oh, I love my new tape recorder. Let's see, put this cassette in and record, push. Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. I got 2 letters from you. I read them over and over. And I love the pictures that you sent. You asked about my motorbike. Well, the reason I bought another second-hand one is because where I used to live, everyone was borrowing it. So I left it for them. I bought this one from Sister Lucy, who is moving to a river town and won't be needing it because she'll be using a canoe. I've been trying to get some news about our recent presidential elections here in Brazil. You know, when you go to vote here, you get your documents stamped. And if you don't vote, the government taxes you. Can you imagine that happening in Ohio? Mom, I loved hearing about the custard you made for Thanksgiving. My mouth was watering just remembering how much I loved it. I tried my skills at making a pumpkin pie. We didn't have a rolling pin to make the crust, so I used a wine bottle. Everybody loved it. Do you hear that truck in the background? Now more trucks. They're building a dam, the largest one in South America. Multinationals are coming in. Big business that wants the iron in the land. We're not happy about this. We would have preferred something a little smaller, more practical, like dams to help provide electricity that is needed. But now more companies are coming, and they're taking millions of trees. our best, mahogany, cedar, and others, all to be exported. But it destroys the land. Oh, a little reminder, I'm coming home in April, only a few months away. And I am counting the days till I'm on the plane heading your way. I'm really looking forward to seeing everyone, especially my new nieces and nephews. Dad, I hope that arthritis in your back isn't giving you so much trouble lately. Is it because Mom has you working in her flower garden? I'm sure that the spring flowers will look beautiful when I get there. I want to get this cassette down to the bishop. He is heading up to the States tomorrow, and I want him to mail it there. So Mom, give Dad a big, big hug and a kiss for me. And Dad, you give Mom another big kiss and a hug. And you can count the days till I'm there to give it to you myself. Take care. I love you. Dot. Our new place was a bit of a challenge. Everyone had just moved there. Some were bussed in, others flown in from other states. Some were shy and wanted to be by themselves. Others loud, aggressive, rude, and short-tempered. I brought my tambourine to get some processions going, but there was no town square. It just didn't work. The priest and a young lawyer with the land commission said I should just be patient, move slowly. I never did anything slowly, and these military hassles were getting to me. There must be some way to reach these people. Becky and I decided we needed to change our style. So we chose new gospel stories. The mustard seed, the sower whose seeds fell in many places, building homes with firm foundations, all stories that would connect with the people. And it worked. The settlers finally gave us approval. And they began to learn from each other how to improve the soil and make those seeds take root. There were now indigenous people and settlers connecting and forming new base communities. How good is the good God? The next few days weren't as much fun. The bishop wanted to see us. He was so apologetic, saying that we had to go to a government hearing because we had been accused by a local priest of stirring up the farmers. And were we communists? The bishop said that he would go with us and prepared us for their interrogation. Answer direct questions with very short answers and be positive. Becky was first. She did well and was let go. Then was my turn. Your name, please. Sister Dorothy Stang. What exactly are you doing in Para? I am teaching religion classes and literacy classes. I understand that you bring farmers together and teach them about farming. What would you know about this? I grew up in Ohio, and my father taught me all about soil and crops. Sister, stick to religion if you must. If we hear that you are teaching peasants to criticize our government, we will be forced to take further action. Later, the bishop told us, being falsely accused is part of the struggle you have taken on here in Brazil. It's up to you to decide whether or not you can do this work. Go as far as your courage will carry you. It never crossed our minds to give up. We continued, and in a few years, we had 30 new communities. Becky was following her passion to work with the Indian tribes, and mine was to work with the poorest of the poor. I heard about this city, Jakunda, that was about 90 miles away. I wanted to check it out. The rickety bus ride that brought me there was where I had never gone before, passing through devastation that I had never seen. Hundreds and hundreds of acres where trees had been cut down and fires set to finish off the destruction. The smoke was choking me. And, oh, the little animals and the birds. I wonder how many of them had been destroyed. This is wrong. Wrong. This is violent, destroying creation like this. I stayed in the lovely house of a family where only two hammock hooks were all I needed on the wall. They loved having me, and I was grateful. I began meeting our neighbors and learned illegal loggers and cattle ranchers were adding lots of tension. They burned the peasants' crops to get them to move. And if they didn't, they burned their homes too. These homes were made of mud, branches, and straw. Well, the farmers organized a labor union and asked for my advice, since I had worked with INCRA. It's an important term you'll hear often. It stands for the National Institute for Colonization and Agrarian Reform. They were good guys. Their job was to keep track of the land grants, but usually they didn't know who did own the land. They were polite to me, but I knew I annoyed them. I asked too many questions and they didn't know the answers. The military was now watching the house where I lived to see who was coming in and going. I decided I need to get away for a few days. So Becky and I decided to meet at a halfway point where we talked about these new laws against foreigners. They gave officers the right to get rid of anybody who disturbed the peace. I could get blamed for the action of the farmers and be deported back to the United States. I did not want that. I thought I had better keep a low profile for now. But when I got back to Jakunda, I learned that the farmers had moved ahead with their plan and were now to be armed with guns. I tried to tell them, no, this is not the way. And I was told not to push my ideas on them. The police would be of no help. They're paid to take care of the rich with a few extra bribes. This group was more stubborn than me. I felt I was losing my effectiveness. I knew I would have to move on if I was to stay in Brazil. I heard about Bishop Dom Erwin Krautler, who was in the Diocese of Altamira, 350 miles away, that he had good pastoral skills, worked well with the people, and remembering the words, "Go as far as your courage will carry you." I felt now was the time. So I went to see Bishop Krautler. He was a tall, thin Austrian, helping 100,000 peasants settle along the TA, the Trans-Amazonica Highway. He told me I would need strong faith to inspire them. They would also need to learn to farm, and then to read and write, if they were ever going to realize their dreams. I told him that I had experience in villages and towns, and I had helped build chapels and schools, and that I grew up in a rural part of the United States. But I didn't continue in Jakunda because of, local politics. He had a place for me to live right across from his house with some other sisters who were working in the parish. He warned me not to expect too much from INCRA. They only give the peasants the land, a rake and a shovel, some food for a year, but no training in farming or building. Don't worry, Bishop, I'm the very one you need. Give me the poorest of the poor, and I will go there. So I got a section with no roads, only a few trails into the forest, where the people were to find their own land. I asked him about the big ranchers. He said they didn't have any yet, but he knew they were coming. Don't worry about me, Bishop. I'm not afraid. We went to meet the parish priest I would be working with. Father Lucas had begun 7 communities. As we started out the next morning, Father Lucas introduced me to Paulo and his wife Eliza. I could see the surprise on their faces. They had never seen a white woman in the forest, much less a nun in a t-shirt and skirt. I was looking all around too. They had chickens and a pot over a fire, corn growing, and rows of vegetables. Is this the land Incra gave to you? Oh no, my family lived here long before land reform. The wheels in my mind were turning. This would be a perfect place to start a community. They said they knew that there were families nearby and that they would love to have Mass. Yippee! I squealed as we left that evening. That was a good move. Father Lucas wanted to temper my enthusiasm with a few facts about Incra. Though there was lots of land available, the deeds of ownership were hard to get. And when they were given to peasant families, they could be wrong or non-existent. Some deeds the ranchers held were fakes, but passed off as originals by the illegal ranchers. We decided that I should go up to the Incra office and just get acquainted. So if there was a problem, I could be a mediator and they would trust me to give proper documents for my people. So the next day I went to the office. I could see many peasants carrying their stuffed bags and plastic suitcases, packed in a hot, loud, sweaty room. People hadn't washed in days. When I finally got to the front, I told one of the 2 employees that with the approval of Bishop Krautler, I had come with the settlement of these new landless immigrants, and I wanted to help. You want to help us? Yes. I told them of my experience in Corowata in southern Pará and asked if they had a plan. He said, well, those peasants could go to a place about 50 miles away from here. It's called Nazaré. It's a 2-day walk, or 1 day in a bus ride if they have any money. In Nazaré, you will get some food, a few tools for farming. When I left that day, the man said he would call up to Belém, the capital of Pará, and tell them, we have a new assistant. I thought I could use my motorbike here, but only 100 miles of the 3,300 miles of the Transamazonica were paved. And those were all at the opposite end. So I walked several miles through the muddy ruts each day. I loved my sandals, but they were worthless on these roads. I had to give them up for gym shoes. But little by little, I got to know all the people along the way. The goal was to help these isolated groups to unite, and then to make these local communities base Christian communities. There were no villages, so working together, we could build a school, a little parish center, little stores and roads, at least paths to them. I would encourage them and congratulate them, the power and the strength of our community, saying, we can stand together and help each other out in thick and thin. My first year was wonderful. I loved my trip to work by boat and bus. It gave me good time for reflection and plans. But it was about 2 hours each way, 4 hours a day before the long walk, and I felt I could be better used if I didn't have to travel so far. When I told Bishop Krautler this, he okayed my plan to live in Nazaré and encouraged me to find a companion to join me. Some farmers built me a small hut just like theirs, with skinny tree trunks tied together with vines, and a roof with the babasu palm leaves. Now that I was a resident of Nazaré, I had plans for this town. With some gift money from my family and friends, and grants that I wrote, I could now hire workers. My nephew, who had studied engineering, wanted to come down and help build dormitories. Then, a kitchen and dining room were added to the classrooms to make a great education center. And now, with a roof, this could even be used during the rainy season. Well, this looked really cool, and many peasants wanted to be a part of it. I got more teachers ready, so farming techniques, cooking classes, leadership training, besides reading and writing, were taught. It wasn't long before 60 landless peasants graduated from the center. We named it Centro Nazaré. It is faith that sustains me. I have also learned 3 things are difficult. As a woman, to be taken seriously in the struggle for land reform. To stay faithful to believing these small groups of poor farmers will prevail in organizing and carrying their own agenda forward, and to have the courage to give your life in the struggle for change. I also know you can't just talk about the poor. We must be poor with the poor. And then there's no doubt how to act. Our success had a way of being short-lived and tested. Ranchers were moving in and seemed threatened by educated peasants. They appeared to befriend some of the peasants, warning them, "Watch out for that Sister Dorothy. She's teaching peasants the land is theirs and they just settle on it." Our farmers had an organization called the Pioneers Association. As they became larger and stronger, we worked to petition for wide roads and street signs so the trucks could carry the goods to and from the market. The illegal ranchers also had multiplied and did not want to see these symbols of community stability. Bishop Krautler told the farmers that he would say Mass at the new site, supporting their demands. He'd bring another priest with him. I was not going to be there because the Notre Dame sisters from Brazil were all getting together for a meeting and a dinner. I was looking forward to being with the sisters and just hearing from everybody what was the news around. Well, there was a loud knocking at the door. It startled us. I thought, maybe it was the bishop and he is here to surprise us. But no, it was a man in tears. "It's the bishop. He's been in a serious accident." He had gone about 14 miles and was heading up a steep hill when a truck came right down at them. The steering wheel saved him, but he was badly injured and flown to Belen. The priest with him was killed. Soon after, I met with the farmers from the association who said they knew that the ranchers were behind this accident. No accident. We've been threatened before, but why the bishop? To scare you and to remove one of our leaders. They looked at me quizzically. What about you, sister? Oh, I'm not afraid. And I will stay here as long as the bishop wants me to. And right now, I know he wants me to carry on. Another sister and 2 laywomen came to live with me. They took care of religious classes for the adults and teaching the children. I was gathering the settlers into communities. Timber ranches and sawmills were starting all over with no work for the peasants. We needed to be heard. Organizing with INCRA and other groups, we were going to bus 360 families on the Trans-Amazonca to Belém, our state capital, and then on to Brasilia, our country's capital, 600 miles away, demanding financial aid for Anapu. We camped along the way, a real convoy, tents and shower curtains, pots and pans, rice and beans. We slept in parks and washed in fountains. We had campfire songs of unity and hope. Let's get off that bus now. This is where our campsite is tonight. Oh, those roads. Stand up, everybody. Stretch. You've been on old school buses before. This is no Mercedes, believe me. Turn to the people on your right side. Give them a little back rub. Everybody needs it. Yeah, turn around. That's it. Those rough shoulders. That's good. Now turn to the opposite side. Come on. Oh, sister, you've been working so hard. I know you've been taking it. Oh, there's some muscles that need to be loosened up. Ah, that's good. Okay. Keep going now. Thank you so much for your help. And I'm so sorry. The kid's feeling better now. Beautiful. Good. Thank you guys for helping with that flat tire. I know it was terrible. You are wonderful. Thank you so much. Did you get that hole in your tent fixed? Good. I don't know if we got duct tape, something over there, masking tape. Just try to get it. I'm sorry about those things. They were kind of nasty. Is that grilled chicken? I think I'll have one. Oh, that's delicious. Chicken over here. That was a cold beer? Don't mind if I do. Thank you so much. Good to see you. Yeah, you just keep those little brewskis coming. Love it, love it, love it. Okay. And how's the kids doing? Are they okay? We're going to need some more help. The posters got rained on and we got to get some more. We've got to be ready for that. Are you going to be there? Absolutely. Okay, love it. Okay, there's our theme song. Okay, we got to keep moving. And Amazonia is going to be our chorus line as we start it. Amazonia, insomnia, the mundo. So Amazon is showing the insanity of the world. Amazonia, insomnia. longer. The press loved it and sent out crews of photographers and journalists to cover this amazing story. And finally, the president of our country, along with his ministers of health and education, roads and finances, responded to our demands. Back on the bus. A few weeks later, when Anapu received the money, I felt both exhilarated and exhausted. The people thought we organizers were heroes. It had been 10 years now, and I needed a break. A few bouts with malaria had taken my strength, and I was going home for a little rest. As I flew home to the States, I saw from the air so much more land had been destroyed. Wasn't that long since I last saw this view? Now, only burned, barren land was beneath me. I'm going on a home visit, about 5 minutes. That means a break for you. Flying back home. It was great spending time at home. Got a few new digs to wear. Oh, let's see, we'll put this. I'll hang this up. Apartment. It was great spending time with family. My Notre Dame sisters in Cincinnati. And then I signed up for a program at the University of the Most Holy Name in California. I became immersed in the Creation-Centered Spirituality Center. As I studied and learned and shared stories of mine from Brazil with laughter and tears, I felt a great support and renewed energy to share what I was learning with all of my people in Brazil. Our relationship with the earth is all connected. I know my family and community were hoping that I would stay home in the States, retire, do something easy. But I felt a new commitment to the women and the girls and protecting the biodiversity of our earth. Upon my return from my home visit, I was asked to attend the United Nations Earth Summit Conference. It was going to be held in Brazil. It had 500,000 environmentalists from all over the world. Part of the Earth Charter that was drawn up says, "We are the earth, the people, plants, animals, rains and oceans, breath of the forest and flow of the sea." We honor Earth as the home of all living things. We cherish Earth's beauty and diversity of life. This group represented over 100 countries. The main topic was how to solve the problem of deforestation in Brazil, the Philippines, India, Central America, and Southeast Asia. Forest depletion was taking place at a rapid pace. Sustainable development was the key. It was possible to use the land for human needs, food, clothing, and shelter, and still preserve the land for future generations. Yes, the world was finally concerned about the destruction of the rainforest, the lungs of the earth. Let me tell you, I got so charged up, I hit the ground running. And we had 3 new postulants to join the team. A women's group was formed to raise money because we were going to build a fruit processing factory, and the women would run it. It would be powered by the electricity generated by a small dam. Then I designed t-shirts to sell. They had pictures of birds and animals, plants of the forest, and it said, "The death of the forest is the death of us all." This would be my new mantra. The death of the forest is the death of us all. I worked my hardest to convince the farmers that we needed to restore the earth by planting seedlings. This slash and burn style not only destroyed the Amazon forest, but the earth as well. After we take from the earth what we need, then we have to restore and replant seedlings to be certain that there will be beauty and life for the children of the next generation. Sister, I think that conference was good for you, but it's not practical. The days aren't long enough now to get done with all of our work. When will we have time to plant? Remember when you didn't think you wanted to learn to read before we built the education center? Look how great the center has been for your whole family. You've just got to trust me on this one. And believe, like my dad used to say, you've got to plant with love so the seeds will grow strong. The women were much easier to convince. They loved each of my ideas because it gave them new life. The fruit factory idea was supported by several groups. A priest in Belen gave us 8,000 bricks. A Peace and Justice Committee from St. Raphael's in Springfield, Ohio, supported us with donations for many years. Another project was realizing that herbs and plants have healing powers, medicinal purposes. This awareness could save the people the expensive costs of store medicine. Infant care and new mother's health was also improved through new classes. I even applied for scholarships. Now, some of our young people could bring back the information from their studies in science, agriculture, and technology. I knew I wasn't the one to teach technology, though I did buy a computer. I also bought hundreds of seedlings of cedar and mahogany so the farmers could easily begin reforestation. Then I received word from my sister. Maggie and her husband were coming to visit me. Yahoo! I couldn't wait to show them the new school, the houses that we had built, and to show them, to tell the other rest members of the family that we were using their donations. A new face in town would always cause a stir. Some thought Maggie was another nun. Her husband quickly wanted to clarify that. And no, he wasn't a priest either. 2 men seemed to disregard all manners as they came up to us in a restaurant asking if I was Sister Dorothy, and said, "You should be careful, sister. You ought to go home to the United States. If you don't, we're going to get you." As they left, I said, "Don't worry about them. It happens all the time. What would anybody want with a 73-year-old nun?" My sister and brother-in-law weren't convinced. My brave words did not cover up a real threat. "Dot, you could come home with us." "Thanks, but I need to stay. I must be a sign of hope and courage for the people that I love so much." Our work and organizing was recognized when Anapu was established by the state of Pará as a county. We now could have elections for a mayor and council. I was thrilled when 2 of our farmers won seats on the council, and the new mayor asked me and my team of teachers to run Anapu's educational programs in the schools. Word of this progress spread. Hundreds of families were migrating to this area. Our road was paved now, bringing in many people with hopes and dreams for a better life. But the new families found it was no easy street. Unknown and unrecognized, they were easy prey for loggers and ranchers who showed them fake documents. I would go to defend the rights of the small farmers who wanted to create a successful model of family agriculture. I knew who was threatening these innocent people, and I reported them. I had been there so long, I knew everyone by name, and I wanted them stopped from threatening and intimidating the farmers. Many settlers were so desperate for land, they would sign up for a PDS. That was their own plat, a piece of their own land, even if they thought my ideas were crazy. This land that was already declared unproductive because of its destruction, and therefore it was eligible for land reform. I knew some of these land titles were disputed, and I wanted INCRA to guarantee the rights of the settlers. Well, the settlers became impatient with all the red tape, and 50 families decided to move together and just get started on an unused interior road on PDS Esperanza. The rainy season had begun, and they wanted to start planting. But as soon as they were finished, they were visited by police and armed security men, telling them that they were invaders and to leave immediately. The settlers were living in a state of terror. Then I learned in a newspaper article that ranchers had listed all their enemies, people who they thought were threats to their progress and wealth. My name was listed as number 2, with a price on my head. Then I got the news that my Brazilian citizenship came through. I hoped this legality and honor would ward off some of this suspicion of this North American who they thought was an American spy, creating conflict and trying to rob the biodiversity of Brazil for the United States of America. The opposition and criticism increased. I just wanted to see people and families happy and caring for Mother Earth. I learned that I was named Woman of the Year and an honorary citizen of the state of Pará. And my friends from the Human Rights Organization awarded me Humanitarian of the Year from the Brazilian Bar Association. Oh yeah, I had friends in high places. But I think all this good press, though I knew it really belonged to the people, was infuriating the ranchers. My brother David and my sister Maggie came down for the award ceremony, and we stayed together in a hotel in Brasilia for the weekend. There was to be a televised panel of environmentalists discussing deforestation and the plight of the peasant farmers. I was asked to sit on it with them. I listened to them talk, politely acknowledging each person's contribution. Then the moderator turned to me and asked, Do you know who these people are who are menacing the farmers? This was an opportunity I had to grasp. People had to know the truth. Maybe this publicity could get some action. Oh yes, I have been in Anapu for 20 years. Why, I have a list right here. I know exactly who has forged documents and who has fake documents. As I read the names of ranchers responsible for violence and police who ignored the problems, they heard ranchers' names who were leaders of international corporations and also government officials. The panelists were stunned. My moment of fame was over, and I returned to the project in Anapu. Settlers continued to be threatened. Homes were burnt. and fields ruined. So I went with names and dates denouncing the land-grabbing illegal loggers. Well, those letters paid off. Some of those loggers were heavily fined. Then I was brought into custody and held for questioning. Friends came to speak on my behalf, and letters of support arrived. Felicio Pontes, a federal prosecutor and friend of mine, wrote to the Secretary of State asking for police protection for me. But I didn't want it if I also couldn't provide it for my people. My mother house in Ohio wrote saying these charges were absurd and false, and I would never encourage violence. Finally, I was let go. Why don't I feel free? Is it because my eyes are getting weaker and my bones hurt? I've been threatened with death, threatened to be expelled from Anapu, all because I cry out for justice. The phone rang late that night. It was a farmer from the PDS settlement Esperanza. Louis and his family were burned out of their home. They need food and clothing, sister. We need your help to decide what to do. We want to have a community meeting to decide together. Will you come, Sister Dorothy? Of course I will. I'll get a ride up there in the morning. Louis had lived on that land for 4 years, waiting for his deed. A rancher arrived and insisted it was his land, and some of his men threw grass seed all over it. That could kill the farmer's crops in just a week. And then he would bring in his cattle. That saga started over a month ago, and Louis thought that the title was still coming through. Incra said it would be there in the near future. Why didn't this rancher want to wait? He knew that Louis had taken his family to visit relatives for Carnival weekend. So he had 2 of his hired hands, Ray Fran and Clodoaldo, go along with their boss, Tato, to be at Louis's home when they returned. Tato told Louis he had bought the land and offered Louis money to leave. Louis refused and said, let's go together to the Incra office. And if your title is legal, I will leave. But if mine is legal, you will leave. Tato refused and left. He returned 2 days later with guns, kerosene, and 2 other men. After several rounds of gunshot, Tato shouted, "Get outside, all of you, unless you want to burn in your house!" Inside, Louis's family could smell the kerosene that was being poured around their house, and they ran out, huddled together, children crying and clinging to their parents. Grief-stricken, they watched the crackling fire blaze and cackling men gaze. I woke up early, prepared coffee, prayed for the strength to make it through this day. Nelda, a new young sister, had just arrived 2 days ago. She poured a cup and with youthful exuberance said, "Sister Dorothy, how do you pray?" Now, I light a candle and look at the crucifix and ask Jesus to help me carry the cross of his suffering people this day. we spent a few moments in silence. I called Ivan and asked him if he could drive us to bring the supplies for Louis's family and the food that we would need for the meeting. Having some extra rice and beans for the people to take home would always guarantee better attendance at meetings. While I was still home, I wanted to make one more call. Good morning, David. Yeah, I just wanted to call and say hello and take in some of that fresh air of Palmer Lake, Colorado. Oh, it's 4 o'clock in the morning there? Oops. I'm sorry. It's 7 o'clock here, and our ride will be here soon. We're going up to give support to the Esperanza project. We got hammers and saws, food and blankets. We're going to rebuild a home for one of our families that was burned out last night. It is our land, and it belongs to us. I'm a little worried this time. The struggles seem to be getting a little more difficult. David, would you pray that I have the courage to keep the project alive? The president of INCRA, he's coming from the capital to meet with us. Isn't that great? Oh, our ride is here. I gotta go. A big hug and kiss. Thanks. And God bless you too. Bye. While Ivan packed up the supplies, oh, I got my shoulder bag, my vest. Let's see. Map, pen, Bible. All the documents I would need for the meeting. How you doing? I'll be right there. We arrived in Esperanza, and a group of settlers was there to meet us with grateful hugs. Our new meeting place had also gone up in flames. It was alongside Louis's home. We walked to the side of the fire and found men building a house for Tato. I pulled out my maps to show them. This was part of the land given to the farmers. When Tato came up to me, "Sister, you have meddled in our land long enough. If you don't go away, you'll be killed, and we'll bury you under this building." Oh, more threats, I thought. The slight tremor in my hand caused my pen to drop. Ivan picked it up, and the settler said, "Come on, sister, let's go back." On the way back, the men pointed out to me Rayfran and Eduardo sitting on a log smoking cigarettes. With the determination in my step, I walked up to them. Excuse me, guys, can you move over a little bit? Yeah. As I sat down between them, I pulled out my maps to show them the very plot marked PDS. You know, this land, there is enough land for each of you to have your own property. You don't need to be someone else's farmhand. Why don't you come with me to the meeting tomorrow morning? They mumbled, "No, it's our boss's land." I stood up, shook their hands. God bless you. Gave them a blessing, hoping I would see them at the meeting. I wanted to believe that there is goodness inside of every person. They left in their truck, and I went down to Vicente's house. I wasn't really sure if Vicente was a friend or not, but he wanted to talk with me, and he had a sweet little daughter to take care of since his wife had died. Vicente was called out of the house by some men passing by. I didn't see him. I was enjoying his daughter. When he returned, I began, "You know, we have to look to the future. Yeah, there have been some events and plans that we've, have been ruined in some places, and mix-ups and confusion. But I have accurate documents, and everything will be explained at the meeting. And we know God is on our side. And we are also going to have a guest who is coming to explain how to plant and grow cocoa. I'm sure there are lots of chocolate lovers, and it will be a good seller. Vicente, was there something that you wanted to say to me? No, I think you answered it. The evening was winding down, and I had a roll-up mat to sleep on rather than my hammock because lately my back had been bothering me. I hung my little lantern on the wall, and carefully lay down and curled up on the mat, listening to the lulling sound of the rain. In the morning, I was startled awake. I better get up. And thought I would better get down there before everyone arrived for the meeting. Vicente heard me and said, "Sister, can I fix you a cup of coffee?" "No, thanks. I know they're preparing some for the meeting. I'll just be on my way. I told Cicero that I'd stop by for them." "All right, I'll see you there, sister." It didn't look like there was going to be any sunshine today. It was a gentle rain as I carefully walked down the muddy road. I called to Cicero from the road, and he waved saying, I'm not quite ready yet, sister. Can you wait a minute?" "That's okay. I'll keep going. I'm moving a little bit slow. I know you'll catch up with me." I kept walking up the hill, and then at the top of the hill, I saw Ray Fran and Clodoaldo spreading grass seed on the farmer's land. "Hey guys, you know this is illegal. Why don't you put that down and come with me to the meeting?" They exchanged glances and didn't seem like they even heard me. Well, I better be off. I offered them my hand and turned to leave and heard, "Hey sister!" As I turned back with a smile on my face, I saw Rayfriend pointing a gun at me. I froze. I looked at the gun and at each man. I reached into my bag as I said, "No, don't do this to me." "Get your hand out of that bag. Are you going for your weapon?" "I carry no weapons, only this. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are the pure of heart. They shall see God. Blessed are the meek. They shall inherit the earth. Blessed are they who suffer persecution for justice." That's enough of that. As Clodoaldo spit at me, Rayfriend clicked the gun and aimed at me. I held my hand up to my face to shield it when I heard the sound of the gunshot. The bullet hit me in the hand. As I fell forward, my blood dripping onto the ground, I saw movement. It was Cicero cowering beside a tree. I held my head, crying softly, as Rayfriend came over me and shot me 5 more times in the back and the head. How good is the good God?
within the Amazon, her voice was silent, but we heard it round the world. She lived and died for the cause of justice, for the poor and for the earth. She brought hope into the forest. In the face of danger, she relied on faith. She stood firm in her belief. Sister Dorothy, you will live forever in the hearts and minds of all you knew. Like the tree planted by the water, your roots run deep, still bearing fruit. Sister Dorothy, you will live forever, for you left a legacy of faith. We'll carry on the work you started, praying God will grant us grace. I believe the earth must have cried out as all of nature witnessed her fall. The sky began to cry to wash away the bloodstains from the place she lay. From the place she died, once just a voice in the distant jungle. Now we all hear the message loud and clear. Each one of us is called to make a difference in this world. Even in the face of fear, Sister Dorothy, you will live forever in the hearts and minds of all you knew. Like the tree planted by the water, your roots run deep, still bearing fruit. Sister Dorothy, you will live forever, for you left a legacy of faith. We'll carry on the work you started, praying God will grant us grace. She lived and died for the cause of justice, for the poor and for the earth. She brought hope into the forest. In the face of danger, she relied on faith. She stood firm in her belief. Sister Dorothy, you will live forever in the hearts and minds of all you knew. Like the tree planted by the water, your roots run deep, still bearing fruit. Sister Dorothy, you will live forever, for you left a legacy of faith. We'll carry on the work you started, praying God will grant us grace. Dorothy Stang, you will never die.
I'm sure we are all deeply moved. And that at the end of the evening, we know what Dorothy did, but we also know who she was. And we know that her faith was what made her able to do what she did. And Nancy, thank you so much for making her come alive to us this evening. Both of these women, Nancy and Dorothy, were ordinary and extraordinary at the same time. And may we all have the faith and courage and tenacity of Dorothy to confront injustice that we encounter in our own lives. And like Dorothy, do it with great heart and a great smile. I want to thank Nancy for bringing Dorothy alive to us this evening and helping us know the story of a great woman who did great work because she knew the good God who sustained her in all she did. So thank you again. Our next lecture this year will be the Catherine of Siena lecture on March 31st. The title is What We Have Seen, Heard, and Touched with Our Hearts. In this presentation, Brian Pierce, author of We Walk the Path Together, Learnings from Thich Nhat Hanh and Meister Eckhart, and Martin de Porres, A Saint for the Americas, will explore how we discover that God has taken on a human face in the person of our neighbor, just like Dorothy Stang. Brian is a wonderful preacher and presenter who will help and challenge each of us to explore our own spirituality. And also looking ahead this summer, on July 8th and 9th, Timothy Radcliffe will be here for 2 days and offering several presentations. I want to thank all who have assisted us this evening, and especially thank all of you for being here, and some of you really had to travel. And we hope to see many of you in March and maybe in July. Please take some cookies for the road. If anybody wants refreshments, the pub is open in the rear back, right behind those doors. There are a few copies of From the Hill on the Dominican tradition by the door if you want those as you leave. And once again, thank you so much for being with us this evening. Safe journey home.